Hi there, my name is Chloe and I'm from the Life and Limb Puppet Company. We were going to be presenting Dragon at the Beverley Puppetry Festival. But instead I'm here to run a workshop on making rodded marionettes, also sometimes known as a Sicilian marionette. The puppets we're going to be making today are very simple. They have a rod that runs through the head and the body of the puppet. They have strings that allow us to manipulate the hands, and they have legs which swing under the influence of gravity so the puppet can walk. What are you going to need to collect? First of all, some kitchen foil or alfoil. You'll need that for making the head. Some wire for making the rod. In this case we've used a coat hanger and we've trimmed it here and here, so we have this nice long straight bit. It gives us about 50 centimeters of wire. Please make sure that the coat hanger you grab or the wire that you pick up is something that you can actually bend. This is a very old coat hanger and it's too hard for me to bend with my fingers. You're going to want some fresher wire that's easy to bend. Corrugated cardboard for making the legs. You know it's corrugated cardboard when it has the little lines on the inside, the little zigzags. You're going to want about half an A4 page worth of corrugated cardboard. For making the body of the puppet and some straps on the legs, you're going to want some thinner cardboard, so it's nice and flexible but quite firm and holds its shape. You're going to need about an A4 page worth of that. In terms of tools, you're going to want a pencil, a sheet of blank paper, some scissors to do cutting with, some thread for stringing the hands and also to help you make a circle, some tape for holding things together, and if you have access to them, some pliers for bending the wire and cutting the wire. If not, make sure the wire that you choose is easy to bend and easy to cut. You're also going to need some PVA glue or white glue. Alright, our first step is making the rod of the puppet. The rod also contains the body and hips of the puppet, and we do this by bending wire. Now, I've cut my wire off a coat hanger. You might be using soft, flexible wire. That's okay. You just want to make sure that you've got enough. I have about 50 centimeters of wire here. That might sound like a lot, but there's a reason for it. If we make our rod too short and we have to hold our puppet here, our hand becomes very distracting. If we can hold our hand far away from the puppet, our audience will focus their attention on the puppet and not on our hand. The first thing I'm going to do is get my ruler and I'm going to measure. I'm going to measure from the bottom about 15 centimeters. That's going to be where the shoulders of my puppet are. And I'm going to bend it out on a diagonal. I'm not going to bend it at 90 degrees, about 45. That may even be a little bit too much. Let's back it off a little bit. Then I'm going to figure out how tall do I want my puppet's body to be. Probably about to there. It's the long straight bit. That's the bit that's kinked off to the side. I'm now going to bend this bit around like that. So what you should have is a nice long rod and a triangle. This doesn't have to be tight. This can be very loose, this bend, so don't worry about getting it too tight if you can't, especially if you're just using your hands and not pliers. We want the rod to be pretty much center. This is the edge of my puppet here, and this is my rod here at 3 centimeters. I want to do my next bend at 6. It doesn't have to bend far in, just a bit up. I'm just going to manipulate that a little bit with my hands till I'm happy with it. What I should end up with is a nice triangle shape with a nice long rod, one side curving out, one flat bottom bit which is going to be the bar my legs hang off, and a little bit kinking up to the side to stop the legs from just sliding off the bar when I use it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to trace the triangle shape that I've made onto the piece of paper. I know this is the shoulders of my puppet, like this. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out how big I want his head to be. I might have a puppet with a very tiny head and a very big body. That can look very funny. I might have a puppet who has a very big head and a very tiny body. That looks really funny too. I might have a puppet who has an ordinary sized head and a slightly ordinary sized body. That's still very big on on that. You can choose how big you want the head of the puppet to be. If you do a head that's really big, it's going to make the puppet look kind of cute and funny. If you do a head that's really small, you're going to make the puppet look kind of fragile and quite curious. So it's really up to you how big you want the head to be. But it is important to do some planning. I'm going to make my head about this big. Just going to fill in the body shape a little bit for myself. Now I'm going to figure out the legs. Do I want the legs to be very, very big? I can't really do that. I have to make sure that there's a gap between the legs, otherwise they won't swing. As you can see with this puppet, there's quite a big gap between the legs, and it means that they don't brush against each other. So the puppet's legs can swing back and forward very easily. So if I do very big legs like this, I need to make sure that there is at least a pinky finger's gap in between so that the legs can still swing back and forward. That could be quite fun. But I feel like the head's very chunky and the triangle's very chunky for the body, so actually I'm going to give it quite narrow legs. That feels about right. I think you can probably guess what I'm doing. I think I'm going to make mine into a bear. So from this picture, I've decided the proportions and I can actually take some measurements. I've decided that the arms are going to be 5.5 centimeters, but the head is going to be 6 centimeters. So the legs are going to be 4.5 centimeters. Why do you think I've taken these measurements? It's because I want to make sure that when I'm making these bits, they're nice and consistent so that my puppet stays balanced. Also, by having a plan, I know that these proportions work with the body shape that I've bent. Now, I'm going to flip my paper over, and I can see through my paper the shape of the head, the shape of the body, and where my feet needed to hit the floor. We need to draw our puppet on two planes, front on and side on. I can sort of see through the paper that the nose is about there, so I'm going to draw the nose out here because I'm doing my bear nice and side on. You can see from my paper that the eye is about here, so I'm going to draw it here, nice and side on. You can see through my paper that my ears are actually about that tall. I'm going to do that, nice and side on. And how big did I say the arms needed to be? 5.5 centimeters. So I'm going to measure down 5.5 centimeters for the arm. Now that I've checked my proportions, I'm going to draw the side profile of my leg, the shape that I want my leg to look like from the side. Now because she's a teddy bear, I'm going to round her leg out quite a bit. Something like that, I think. I'm actually going to bring her nose back in like this. I'm going to keep this a nice and simple shape. It's going to be her head. Okay. Now that my side profile is done, I can get ready to cut these legs out of cardboard. So what I'm going to end up with is corrugated cardboard legs. Can you see that I've actually got 1, 2, 3 pieces of cardboard cut into the leg shape, glued together? That's how I make my legs nice and thick. You're going to end up with shapes that look the same that you're going to glue together. So I'm looking at this leg and I don't want it to be too big. So I'm going to take a scrap piece of cardboard from the corrugated cardboard and I'm going to line it up. I'm going to have a look and I'm going to measure. It is 4 millimeters. And I've decided that my legs are going to be, look at that, 12 millimeters wide, which means I'm going to need 1, 2, 3 copies for each leg. We are going to cut this out and trace it onto our thick cardboard. Okay, so I've traced out my legs. Now I'm going to cut them. I'm going to use a craft knife. You are probably going to use scissors. Go slowly, go patiently. If you go too fast, your cardboard's just going to collapse. You're going to have to start all over again. Here are my legs all cut out. What we're going to do now is we're going to laminate our legs together. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like that. So they're going to be very thick from this side, and they're going to look like a leg from that side. The best way to laminate our legs together is using PVA glue. You don't want to use too much, you don't want to absolutely flood your legs. Just a little bit. It's such a tiny amount of glue that you need to use. Sometimes the best thing to spread with is just a tiny little bit of cardboard. And only on one side, pressing it on. And the next bit. That's one leg done. Alright, now, the next thing we need to do is make loops on top of the legs. Can you see here how the legs have a little loop on top of them? It's made out of a thin cardboard. My legs are about 12 mil wide, spot on, and I want my loop to go over the top. And I'm going to measure out a strip that is 12 millimeters wide. You're going to bend a strip over the leg. Now, what I'm doing is curling the paper. You can do this with scissors or you can do this with your nail. You can even do it on the side of a table. You're just going to drag something sharp so that it curls the paper and it stops the paper from bending into a little triangle as you saw it try to do the first time. Don't put this on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look. I don't want the bend to be too big. Just something like that. See how it's like a little smiley face over the top? It should be no bigger than the wire needs it to be. If I make it too big, my legs are just going to flippy flop everywhere. I should be able to get the wire into it. Once you've cut your first strip, because you figured out how long you need it to be, cut a second so that it is exactly the same length, and do exactly the same thing to it. Now, you're going to take some glue and you're going to pop it on both ends of your strip. Not a lot, just enough. You don't want to flood it with glue, you just want it to be a little bit tacky. Now what I'm going to do to make my second leg even easier is I'm going to draw a line on my first leg where the ends of my cardboard sit. So now I'm going to mimic that line on my other leg so that I know kind of where I want to bend this cardboard to end up with hopefully the same amount of cardboard overhang. Okay, now, just to be extra doubly cautious while everything is gluing down, we're going to use just a little bit of tape to hold everything together. That is our legs done. We're going to leave them now, and in fact, we're going to leave them under something heavy. I'm going to get some books, and I'm going to put the books on top of the legs and leave them alone. Now there is a good chance that you got some glue on your legs, so before you put an expensive book down, grab a piece of paper that you don't mind getting a bit dirty, put it on top of the legs, put the books on top. The next thing we're working on is the body. As you can see, the body is just a cone of cardboard. Now, to make sure that we make a cone that is the right size, we need to measure how big our body is. Our body is 6 centimeters. we're going to add an extra centimetre on top of that 6 because we've measured on a diagonal. And we want to make sure that the cone overhangs the body. A little bit extra is always good. Now we have to try and draw a circle that encompasses the whole body. We can do this by freehanding it, so just drawing a circle on the paper. We might even try tracing objects that we think are big enough. So we might find ourselves a bowl or a plate that is a bit bigger than that line. This one's going to be too small. The object needs to be twice as big as that line is long. So we can't use this tape, not even if we turn it on its side. There is something else we can do. We can take some string and we can turn our pencil and string into a compass. So we're going to cut ourselves a little bit of string, and then we're going to tape that string onto the pencil, and then we're going to tape the other end of that string right onto the end of our line that we've drawn on the cardboard. Then what you're going to do with your round shape is you're going to cut a little triangle out. You're going to make sure that you cut the triangle only up to the centre bit, so you should end up with a thing that looks a little bit like a Pac-Man. So I can make the cone tighter or looser by winding it in on itself. If I make it too tight, it might not fit around this. So I want to make sure that I don't do something that doesn't fit this shape in. You can go for something that's a little bit broad. You can go for something a little bit tight. Just going to make sure that your triangle fits inside. Then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to tape it. And then just to be doubly sure, I'm going to do a piece of tape on the inside. You may have to trim the top of your cone so that you've got a little hole. And you should be able to. Look at that! It fits just over the top of the bar. Yes. So my bear is going to have a very wide dress on. You can play around with that circular shape. You can make it as tight or as loose as you want, but it is going to be affected by the first triangle shape that you drew. This is where we need some scrap fabric, or you can just use some string or some cord. It doesn't really matter. The reason why I'm using some fabric is because I'm going to cover the cone with this fabric as well a little bit later. But you might decide to just leave your cone completely made out of cardboard and colour it in. Now, I'm going to cut myself some fabric in a nice long strip. To figure out how long to make this strip, it needs to be about 3 times the length of any one of your arms. So you can go back to your plan and you can check how long your arms were. So ours were 5.5. So I know that I need to cut a length of fabric that is going to be more than 16.5 centimeters long, because I want to make sure I can tie it around the shoulders and tie little knots on the end of it. So I'm just going to check how long it is. It's long enough. Even if you do it a bit longer than you need, that's better, because it gives you a little bit of room for error. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to fold our fabric to make the shape of our arms. And we're going to make both arms with this one piece of fabric. The best thing that I find to do with this is to fold it in half. And fold it in half again. And then on this end, I'm going to tie a nice tight knot. All right. So you've got a little hand on the end of a little strip there. I want to make sure that my arm stays nice and floppy. So let me see. That looks nice. That looks nice. There we go. So now my puppet has little arms. Just like that. Now, as you can see, his arms don't move very well because there's a lot of fabric inside them. So on the bit that's open, I'm going to just trim some away. But make sure you do it on the bit that's open, not the bit that's folded. The reason why we tie a knot is so that there's a little bit of weight at the end of the fabric and that makes them flop about. Alright, my legs are nice and dry, which is good. It helps if you leave them in the sunshine or on top of a heater. I'm just going to take the body off my rod for a second because I don't quite need it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to very gently ease my legs onto my puppet. You might find going this way is easier, you might find going this way is easier, depending on how tightly you've done the curve. The trickiest bit is making sure that you put your legs on so that they are both facing the right way on your puppet. This next bit's fun. We can decide how far apart we want our legs to be on our puppet, whether we want them to be very far apart or very close together. Regardless of whether you want them far or close together, we need to make a little buffer so that they don't rub on each other. So, this puppet, as you can see, I've done it with blue tack. On this puppet, I've done it with tape. And today, we're going to do it with tape. I generally say that it should be at least a pinky finger apart. If you've decided you want your legs to be very, very, very far apart, just measure the gap that you want them to be apart. And that's how wide you're going to make your tape. I want to make sure that my legs are sitting nice and central, so I'm not actually going to ask them to sit right on the ends of the wire. So I'm going to get my tape. I'm going to measure 2 centimeters on it. About 6 or 7 centimeters. Put that piece of tape in the middle. Little bit of overhang at first, and wrap the tape around. Try and make sure that the tape is just wrapping over tape, that it's not going all skewy and wonky. Look at that! Now, I'm going to do the same on these little end bits, because I don't want my legs to wander too far. I could do it by bending this bit of wire and this bit of wire again, but then I run the risk of the wire catching on the legs, so it's actually just easier to do it with a tiny little bit of tape. You don't want it to get stuck to the leg, so you just have to go slowly and carefully. See how my leg can still swing freely even though it's got a buffer on each side? If you find that your leg is stuck, it's probably because some tape is catching on it, so just try and shimmy the tape away from the leg on either side. Can you see that? I can make my puppet walk. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How cool is that? And it's just made out of cardboard. All right. Happy with the legs. Let's get this body on. Now we can use a little bit of tape to stop the body from sliding about. We just want to make sure that our body does cover that wire. You don't want the body sitting up here so the audience can see the wire. You want to make sure that it's covered. So when you feel like you found a spot where you're really happy, I'm just going to tape the top of the body and the wire together like that. So you should have a little bit of tape on the wire and a little bit of tape on the body. Yay! Alright, now to do these arms. You've probably guessed it. I'm just going to tape them in place. Now you can tape them on the back of the body, but they're probably not going to move very much. Or you can tape them on the wire, and that's going to give your puppet a bit more of a neck. It's up to you. I've made the hands of my puppet quite small on this character, and that's okay. I quite like that. The easiest way to make sure that you're sticking your arms on central is to fold them into a horseshoe, drag them onto the rod, make sure that they're facing the right way. So the fold should be on the back, the hand should be pointed towards the feet. Pull them nice and tight. Now, see how I've got weight at the bottom of the hands, which means that they fling about when I do that with the puppet? That's a very good thing. Got my side and front profile. and I'm going to have to make sure that I make a piece of aluminium foil that is about that size. To make sure that the aluminium foil sticks to the puppet, I'm going to take a piece of tape, and this can be a bit tricky. I'm going to tape it backwards onto the wire. So sticky side, big bit of overhang like that. Then I'm going to roll it so the sticky side is facing my hands and I'm still touching the sticky side down the wire. Now we grab our tin foil. So that is about a little bit bigger than the size of the head. Folded side facing down, sort of get it half on, and then I just scrunch it. I like to put my puppet over my little working drawing so I can try and get this to be as accurate as possible as I go. So that I know that it's definitely sitting nice and centered on. That's pretty good, but she's pretty flat from the side. So now that I know that I've got the head the right way that way, I'm going to turn my puppet this way. Because I've got a nose, I'm going to kind of scrunch what I need to be the nose first. So can you see how I have like the nose sticking out there? Just like the wire. Twist it, pull it off, there we go. So that's the puppet pretty much done. We've got legs on it, it can run across the table, it's got a face. However, it's not looking very exciting. We've got to do something about the hands, the head, and the body to make it all look like it's part of one thing, which means we've got to decorate it. That might be using paint, that might be colouring it in with textures, it's entirely up to you. Once you've stuck most of your puppet together, and it looks a little something like this, you're ready to decorate. Decorating your puppet is entirely up to you. With this puppet, I have glued fabric over the cone, and it's the same fabric that I used for the hands, so it looks like she's wearing an entire dress. I have painted the face, I have stuck pins in for eyes, and I have given her bushy hair, so she looks like a little bear who lives wild out in the woods. I've also painted her legs. So, to make your tin foil easy to paint, you're going to want to take some glue and some kitchen towel if you have it lying around. And this is going to get messy. And you're going to want to coat kitchen towel and PVA glue with your fingers. And then you're going to want to stick it onto the alfoil. And you're going to want to cover the whole head in kitchen towel. And then, when it's dry, you will be able to paint it like this. You might decide that you don't want to use fabric on your puppet and instead you just want to paint the cardboard. That's what we've done here. As you can see, we've just painted the cardboard blue, we've just painted his legs yellow, and we didn't even really use fabric for his arms, we just used cord. We got some fake fur and we glued it onto his face, and we just covered his head in many layers of kitchen towel and then painted over it so that it looked smooth. Where the top of your rod is, you're going to want to bend it into a little elephant shape. And you need to make sure that that little elephant shape is facing the same direction as the nose of your puppet. So here's some wire, and I would bend it like this. Here is the bottom of my rod. I'm going to bend it forward so that I get an L shape. I'm going to bend it down so that I have a little sad elephant, and then I'm going to bend the end of it up to make a happy elephant. And that will be the top of my rod. So you're going to take your puppet, you're going to take your scissors, and you're going to take your thread. And you're going to wind out a nice long piece of thread. It's very hard to see the thread, which is why we use black thread when we do puppets, because it's very hard to see. You're going to take your puppet's hand and you're going to hold it down so that the hand is sitting as low as it possibly can. You're going to tie your string down here. It's best to do a double knot. And while you're there, trim off any excess string. So now I have a piece of string on her hand, and that's why tying that knot was so important. It puts a bit of weight in the hand. If I let the string go, the hand wants to flop to the side. Then I'm going to pull the string up and over. There we go. Then I'm going to pull my other hand down. There we go. And I'm going to tie it off like that. I need to make sure that my puppet's hands are down when I tie the string, otherwise my puppet's neutral position will be its hands raised up in the air, which isn't what you want. And again, you need to tie a double knot. There we go. So your puppet's hands should relax in front of them when you're not hanging onto the string, and then when you do pick up the string, you can wave the hands about. You can lift them up to the puppet's face, you can stretch them out in front of the puppet, you can drop them off to the side, you can lift one hand at a time, both hands, you can do whatever you like, you can make them dance. Now that your puppet is all done, you can even make a second puppet if you like, and they can hang out together. The good thing about these puppets is it is possible to manipulate two of them at one time, which is why they can be quite fun to use. You can do things just with your fingers. I hope you have fun, and I'll see you on our next In Beverly.